about another wisdom tradition, which is the Anansi story. So Anansi is the spider, and he is a trickster. He is known for his cunning and his chicanery. He is often using his wits to outsmart animals who are much larger than he is in order to secure what he needs, whether it's food or shelter or what have you. So Anansi is transported across the Atlantic through the transatlantic slave trade by the enslaved, by Akan-speaking people from what is now in contemporary Ghana, for instance. In the Caribbean, he can shapeshift between his spider form and often appears also as an old man. Many of Anansi's stories are about navigating difficult passages. And even though a hero figure who is a trickster can prompt us to ask questions about morality, always within the story, the reminder is that the greater ill is the larger social circumstances in which Anansi emerged, which is the harsh realities and world of the colonial order and plantation society, enslavement, and racialization. So Anansi's actions, therefore, are contextualized within that system. And the principle of moral neutrality is important here. The actions are situationally determined. So is it a good act or a bad act? It depends on the situation, and it depends on who's doing the act and why they are doing what they're doing. I encourage us to also think about other trickster figures. So that you'll notice there was the McDermott's book from 1987. We have other children's storybooks which reflect trickster figures, which are animals which made the transatlantic voyage, particularly stories about rabbits and hares. So Joel Chandler Harris, an American journalist and folklorist who had a teenage job on a plantation in Georgia, overheard the stories and songs of the enslaved, wrote them down in dialect form, and the stories attributed to a fictionalized Uncle Remus brought Chandler Harris fame and fortune, and they're still with us today in terms of Brer Rabbit tales. Beatrix Potter's Peter Rabbit, it's come to light that her father was a cotton merchant, and that the family's fortunes were built through cotton merchandising in the English context. And in his library was one of Chandler Harris's books. So her Peter Rabbit, including characters like Jemima Puddle Duck, may have been inspired, in fact, by Joel Chandler Harris's stories, which themselves were written down from his recollections of enslaved folks in Georgia. My point here is this. These are popular texts in terms of children's literary culture if we're thinking about the educational context from K to 12. Let's tell the whole story. Let's tell the full story behind these stories. I think it behooves us to do this, and I think there are ways in which we can do it. Younger folk are able to have their storytelling experience be a vehicle through which they can also do some learning about the history that brought us all here. In many ways, we are restoring, what may have been obscure. This is an image of Belisaire, who was an enslaved child with the Fry family in Louisiana. This is a portrait from 1837, and the portrait stayed in the family for generations. Around the turn of the last century, Belisaire was painted out, and so you'll see the difference between the top and the bottom. The restoration, only a few years ago, brought Belisaire back into the portrait. And so I think for me, this portrait is a great metaphor about the task of using stories that are there to be able to tell a larger story about the context out of which they came. So we can learn from the story itself, but we can also then learn about that larger context. What do we make of this as educators? Let's think about strategies of resilience, problem solving, and consequences. Let's think about their application across multiple dimensions, including interpersonal relationships, understanding struggles and hardships, encouraging mutual reflections on circumstances from a variety of standpoints. And for the stories themselves that have entered into popular culture, let's think also about their African origin in the Americas through the transatlantic slave trade. It doesn't diminish them. I think it enhances, adds to, and it's a more honest iteration of the stories. And I'm going to stop there. So thank you so much for listening.